institutionality and as well as the community. I think for me what I want to add to this conversation is that I think the issue, we have to understand the issue. The issue is number one, we said we want to make sure that Oregon law are followed and protected. So that's one question that your question is addressing. So yeah, maybe if we allow those folks to be part of the system and they understand and observing make sure that Oregon law is followed. But the other flip side of the coin is that the community, the perception, as a Muslim, someone is telling me that the government is monitoring the other government to make sure that they don't violate your rights, that's problematic to me. So we have to think about how the community that we're supposed to be serving is perceiving this information. Yet we're okay as long as we make sure that your rights are not violated. So we have to really open the conversation more about how do we feel as a community to be part of this community, and ways to do that is to ensure the community that we're not spending our resources that will not be profiled. And that perception is really strong and it's important. It creates, if we withdraw, it will create a condition where the community members can feel protected and their rights be protected. That's really also part of the equation that we have to consider, in addition to if the laws have been followed or if the law has been violated or not.
Quick update, if anyone would like to ask a question anonymously, we have some volunteers in the corner here that will hand you out one of these index cards and a pen, and I'll read out the question for you.
Thank you. In addition to getting large quantities of people, getting large quantities of emails with sincerity and brevity, I'm wanting to know what are the quality, the specific beliefs that need to be corrected in Ted and Nick's thought, that we can really persuade them effectively. So they will be less entrenched in self-justifying with cognitive dissonance and more humbly open.
So I think the reality is that your message to the city council should be your truth. It should really come from your lived experience, and because your goal is really not to try to move people who won't want to be moved. Your goal is to make sure that your voice is included in the process, right? And so I would encourage you to just speak from your heart, and I agree with Commissioner Fritz, who says shorter is better, because I gotta tell you, we get a lot of email, and so if you want us to read it, the shorter it is, the better opportunity you have for us to read it. In addition, I think it's really important for people to show up when the work session is announced, because there's power in having people in the City Hall chambers while we're having this work session, right? Even though you won't get to testify, you won't get to actually weigh in, being in the room will matter. And so for the work session, it's really important that people show up, right? I gotta tell you, today was, again, one of the most diverse days in the Portland City Council. The last most diverse day was the day that I was sworn in. And so it is really, really important that people of color take ownership of City Hall, because it is really your City Hall.
We got a question over here.
Hi, thank you, Reverend Andrea Cano, and thank you for the panel and all that you're doing to share with us today. I think I started about 5 questions 5 hours ago. Now I'm zeroing in on a couple of things. One, are you aware of any other kind of JTTF typical activity in other cities and counties in the state of Oregon I know you cited San Francisco out there, but if there's any relationship you all have with other municipalities or counties that are doing that, one. And then the second thing, is there a way to challenge the budget so that we're not paying for two seconded city staff to the federal government?
I don't know of any other places in Oregon that are having this conversation yet. I think the FBI did an excellent job of selling fear right after 9/11. And so right after 9/11, the JTTF really ratcheted up their desire to have a JTTF in every community across the United States, right? And so every community has their own, and every community, I'm sure, operates a bit differently based on the law enforcement agencies that are involved in it. So in Portland, we have the county sheriffs involved, we have ICE, we have the FBI, we have Portland Police, we have Port of Portland Police, we have TriMet Police. So every law enforcement agency in the city of Portland is involved in some way, shape, or form. And that's the way it has been set up all around the country. But there's a couple of things that I learned from talking to Mr. Cannon this week that I think will be helpful if this relates to your lived experience. One reason that they say we have to keep Portland police officers in the JTTF is because apparently these two police officers know everybody on the street in the city of Portland, and so they prevent the FBI from actually doing enhanced investigations on people, because when they come across someone who appears to be homeless, who appears to need mental health services, apparently these two police officers know everybody. They'll say, oh no, we know that person, and what they really need is some treatment. And so what they said to me was, if those Portland police officers aren't there, then the lower level of surveillance won't be sufficient, right? They will have to actually do more enhanced investigations, which I absolutely don't believe. The other thing that they say is that if Portland police officers pull out, then they will lose access to mental health services, because apparently the Joint Terrorism Task Force is really concerned about getting people connected to community mental health services, and they wouldn't be able to do that if those two Portland police officers were not part of the JTTF. And they say all that with straight faces, by the way.
To help answer that question, I'm actually going to give the mic really quickly to Commissioner Hardesty's Financial Policy Advisor, Kristen Johnson.
Hi, I'm Commissioner Hardesty's Financial Policy Advisor. I came to her office with 10 years of experience in the Office of Management and Finance. What I've been able to find out so far is that the only monetary connection that we have with the JTTF, specifically the FBI, besides the fact that we do fund the 2 FTE that are participating in the JTTF, is that there's a separate provision in the Memorandum of Understanding that was associated with the resolution that says if they work overtime, you can submit a separate request for overtime reimbursement. As far as I can tell, that's never actually happened. So if those officers have worked overtime, I have not yet been able to find if the city's actually requested reimbursement. So it could be that the police bureau is just paying for their overtime, but I cannot confirm definitively right now that that's happening. I just know that that small provision's in there. In the grand scheme of the police bureau's budget, this would be what we would call a non-material, a not very large amount of money to be reimbursed to the city anyway. So there's no budgetary reason to associate ourselves with the FBI. There's no financial benefit to the city there so far, or at all.
Thanks, Kristen. So we have time for maybe about 2 more questions, just so everyone knows.
Hi, my name is Samira. My question is geared towards one of the reasons why hate crimes underreported is because a lot of the Muslim women don't feel comfortable sharing based on they don't understand the difference between what is hate crime, if individuals, especially in Portland so like for example, one person was telling me they experienced an attack while leaving from late class from a homeless person, but they didn't want to report it because they didn't know like the stability of that person's mind. So my question to you is, what is the city doing to help like increase services for mental health issues? Because there's, I wouldn't say like homelessness are like racist or anything, but there's a lot of mental like homelessness that experience mental health and are out there in the streets and attacking young girls or whoever targeting. And what is the city doing to help that increase?
So the city does not fund mental health services. The money comes from the state, and Multnomah County is the provider of mental health services in the county. One of the things that we are doing at the city, however, is as we're building affordable housing with services attached to it, is we're making sure that in those places that people who get into the housing have access to the services they need to be able to live a vibrant life. I will say that it is not unusual. In fact, I believe the data says only 10% of hate crimes are ever reported. And so, most people don't report because you're right. Most of us, we know the experience, but we don't know whether it's actually rises to a level of criminality. And so we have not done a good job of actually educating the public about what's criminal behavior versus what's just inappropriate behavior.
Thank you, Samira, for your question. It's an important question. First of all, I really appreciate the question, and I would encourage you and the other community members who are experiencing hate crimes that they can report. And there's two ways to report. When the state DOJ, Oregon Department of Justice, has actually placed that where you can report. Also, TRUA has also a website where you can report, and those and TRUA's website actually has multiple languages that where you can report hate crimes. But I also want to emphasize and say that there's a lot of plenty of people who have mental health issues who are not racists. So I agree with you that we don't equate that people who have mental health issues also are as racists. So I want to be clear that racism is an issue of white supremacy, and that's what it drives from. It doesn't drive from mental health. So thank you for clarifying that, and so I appreciate that.
My name is Muna, and first of all, thank you for the panel and giving us the opportunity to talk. You guys mentioned that, especially with the Muslim community, I'm a Somali Muslim American refugee, and so I know that in my community, for example, a lot of people will not report it because they're afraid that they're going to be subject to investigation afterwards, or that it's not going to be taken seriously or things of that nature. So what would you suggest for people in that community if the task force is taken away, for example? How are they supposed to feel the safety and freedom to be able to speak and feel like they're a member of the community and not have to worry about being targeted because of their background or because of where they came from?
So let me ask you a question. Give it a mic back for a minute. Do you feel safe today?
No.
I don't feel safe sometimes. Yeah.
Right. And so today we're part of the Joint Terrorism Task Force.
Right.
And it has not increased our feeling of community safety at all.
Right.
In fact, I would say it's increased our anxiety and our fear, right, about what's happening that we don't know about that's going to impact our life.
Right.
I believe that the best place today to actually file a complaint about a hate crime would be with the Portland United Against Hate. Because I gotta tell you, just today I was told that there's a Portland police officer that's all he does is investigate hate crimes. I never knew that Portland police investigated hate crimes at all, because they've always said, well, no, that's not what we do. The FBI does that. Now all of a sudden everybody is investigating hate crimes, right? And so again, we don't feel safer because everybody now is investigating hate crimes. So clearly, we don't have a good method of actually, as KC said, collecting data on hate crimes and actually prosecuting people on hate crimes. Quite frankly, until we start prosecuting some of the white supremacists in the activity that they're involved in, they're just going to keep doing it. They're just going to be more emboldened because there have been no consequences so far for their behavior.
We're going to be all done at 7:30. That's our stated end time. So I just want to thank everyone so much for coming out. This is an amazing turnout. Thank you for being here. I want to thank our panel for coming out.
The drug and violence in the city of Portland, 88 stands for Hail Hitler.
I think you ought to sit down now.
Mark Kruger is the head of the Drug and Vice Division and approves all criminal informants in the city of Portland, and reported to the Oregonian that there's 88 criminal informants.
Good to know.
If you guys have any questions, you definitely want to take them. Please go ahead and instant message us on Facebook at Unite Oregon. Shoot us an email. You can email us as well. Please come and see me here at the front if you guys like to get some additional information. Thank you so much.
That's the legacy of a black man in the United States who stands up and speaks up for his rights. Martin Luther King was arrested over 30 times for being killed. The city of Portland is trying to kill me, and I'm not going to stand it. That's all I have to say. I'm just exercising my First Amendment right. Please don't kill me. Please don't hate me. I am a man. That is your
You're so.
from the United States, and you stand up, you will be ostracized, just like poor white did. Poor white. Let's throw it out there. There's harassment.
How you doing?
You're here. How's everything?
Everything's good.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm still working, still doing crime prevention.
All right.
Yeah. Are you gonna post on YouTube?
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna check that.
Yeah. Joanne Hardesty. Joanne. So I got a question for you. The Portland police have a gang unit, right? Last year, 80% of their stops and stuff was with blacks. They also know the Hispanic community quite a bit. Why can't they send the gang units out to the white supremacist groups?
I don't work for Portland Police, so I don't know the answer to that.
It just seems like that'd be a better idea. Instead of having one officer, you have a task force going after the white supremacist groups.
I think that would be a question for Portland Police.
Yeah, I was just standing there, man.
it's
A legacy for an African American man in the United States who stands up to death.